DreAllDay.com.
Dre Baldwin with DreAllDay.com. Let's talk about how opinions get shared and whose opinion you should listen to. And I'm gonna give you a framework for deciding who's worth listening to and who's not. And I'm gonna give you a simple framework, and I'm gonna explain to you why the framework is the framework. Okay, and first I'm gonna tell you what it is, then I'm gonna explain to you how it works, and then I'm gonna tell you why this is what it is, and I'm gonna give you some examples. Sorry, so I'm gonna lay this whole thing out for you. I'm not gonna bury the lead. Let me tell you up front. Only time you should listen to a person's opinion, especially when they have a very strong opinion on a subject, is when this individual would be just as strong and just as passionate and just as loud if they had the exact opposite opinion. Should I say that again to make sure you got it? Only time you should listen to somebody's opinion is when that person, if you believe this person would be just as loud with their opinion and just as strong and passionate about their opinion if they thought the exact opposite of what they are pushing. And the reason why this matters, let me tell you why this matters. The reason why this matters is because these days a lot of people will be very loud and very passionate and very proud about having a certain opinion on a certain topic, but the challenge is, and the reason why we have to take a lot of people's opinions with a grain of salt, is because these same people who seem so outspoken and they are presenting themselves as they're posing themselves as like courageous for having a certain perspective, these people would not have anything to say if they had the opposite opinion of what they're pushing. Now you may be wondering, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Dre, why does that matter? Why does it matter that they would need to have the same amount of courage and same voice with the opposite opinion? Here's why. Because if a person is only pushing an opinion that you know they wouldn't be pushing it at all if they thought differently, then what is their opinion actually worth? Because it's not really an opinion. Like, is it really an opinion if you're not allowed to think differently? That's a question I want to pose to the audience. And if somebody believes that the answer is yes to that question, my belief is that it's not. But if you think differently, leave a comment and let me know why you think differently. So here's what I'm saying again. I'll make sure you're clear on what the question is. If a person can only have one opinion, they're not allowed to have the opposite opinion, does their opinion even matter? Because they're not allowed to have the other opinion. So what value is it? Because if you're only allowed to do one thing, then it doesn't really matter that you did the one thing, because you wouldn't be allowed to do the other thing even if you wanted to. So that's not really an opinion. All you're actually doing is just doing what you're being told, what's been assigned to you. So let me give you an example. Right now on college campuses all over the United States, and I got a good college campus story that I'm going to tell soon. It's still a developing situation for now, but I got a really good story I'm going to tell you. But right now in America, we all know this to be true. Corporate America, this is the exact same thing. It's the same thing in many political spaces here, but we ain't going to talk about politics. Let's talk about corporate, let's talk about academia. In these two places, there are certain opinions you are not allowed to have for fear of the retribution will be you're going to lose your job. Can everybody agree with that? For example, there are college campuses in America, and any of you tell me, I'm not asking you to tell me if you think it's okay or not. I'm asking you, do you believe it to be true that if somebody was working at certain college campuses, many college campuses in America right now, they were to come out and say, hey, you know what, I'm a Republican and I'm going to vote all Republican in the fall elections, and if Trump runs again, I'm going to vote for him. And the last time he ran, I voted for him. There are people, and there are college campuses in America right now that if you announce that, you wouldn't have a job next week. Can everybody agree that that's true? Now, here's why that's a problem, because it's not illegal to vote Republican. It's not illegal to be a supporter of Trump. It's not illegal to vote for him. But if somebody were to do that and they announced it publicly, they would get fired from their job. So if somebody's out there pushing, for example, so let's say I work on a campus and that's the deal, right? I know that if I announced I'm a Republican or I'm going to vote for Trump, I would get fired, because the students would either get mad at me and try to shut me down, or the faculty would fire me, or somebody would find out about it and they make a big deal about it on social media and make it go viral, and they would pressure the administration to fire me, right? We know that this happens. So you walk around a college campus, you can't find a single outward public Republican. You can't find a single person who will outwardly admit that they are a supporter of Trump. But you find a whole bunch of people who say they support the Democrats and BLM and LGBTQ and all this stuff. But what is any of these people's opinions? Do these people really have a real opinion if you know that they know they're not allowed to have the opposite opinion? I mean, they still have an opinion, still matters. I mean, when they vote, the vote still counts, okay? And when they write an article, the article still posts. And when they post a tweet, we can still read it. I'm not saying that they didn't say it. I'm not saying that I'm not even saying that we necessarily don't need to listen to these people, but how much should you value the opinion of a person who's not allowed to have the opposite opinion? That's my question. That's what I'm trying to figure out from all of you. See, somebody like myself, I can have any opinion that I want. So if I'm pro LGBTQ and I talk loud and let you know how much I'm pro it, you also know that if I was against it, I could say it with the same amount of force and energy and passion that I am for it. I'm kind of indifferent to it. But when it comes to, let's say one where I do have a strong opinion, a boy can become a girl, or a girl can become a boy, and pushing the whole transgender thing on kids, I'm 100% against that. 100% against. Now, if I was 100% for it, here's what you got to understand about me. I could talk about that just as much as I talk about the opposite perspective. And that's why you can respect my opinion even if you don't agree with my opinion, because you know that I have the option of having any opinion that I want. But you talk to somebody who's in academia or somebody who's working in some corporate space, and they're only allowed to have one opinion, because if they have the wrong opinion, quote unquote wrong, no such thing as a wrong opinion, but if they had the wrong opinion, metaphorically speaking, what would happen to them? They wouldn't have a job next week. And everybody needs their job, because the job is how they pay their bills. So when I see somebody who is in one of these compromised positions where they're only allowed to think one way, so if you work at ESPN, you can't come out and say, like in my previous video where I said this girl Rachel Richardson lied and made up this story about some racist stuff happening to her at the BYU game. You work at ESPN, you can't come out and say that was a lie. You can't even say she lied. That story was bullshit. Why don't we condemn her as loudly as we try to support her? If you work at ESPN and say that, you'll be fired. You won't have a job. You won't be on TV. Can everybody agree with that? Again, I'm not asking you to tell me whether you think it's right or wrong. I'm asking, do you agree that that's how it goes? Because we know that's how it goes, because look, who you see at ESPN saying, hey, that girl came out with this bullshit story and now it's been proved as bullshit. We need to condemn her with as much force and as much time as we spent supporting her and condemning BYU and condemning racism, quote unquote. Let's condemn her for the bullshit that she put out. You don't hear anybody on ESPN saying that. Because if somebody who worked at ESPN went to a production meeting and said that, they wouldn't have a job. If they went on Twitter and said that, they would get fired. Or somebody will call them and say, yo, you need to delete that tweet like within the next 5 minutes or you won't be working here anymore. That will happen. So when somebody at ESPN comes out with any opinion on anything involving race, since we know that they're compromised and they're only allowed to talk about things in one direction, how much do we need to value anything that they say on that subject? Because they're compromised. All right, they're only allowed to talk about things that they're told they're allowed to talk about. You get what I'm saying here? So this is how I look at anything. Anytime I hear a person pushing an opinion, first thing I ask myself is, all right, you have that opinion, fine. And everyone's allowed to have any opinion they want. Even if you think they're a complete idiot and you think they're wrong for having the opinion that they have, they are allowed to have it. America is a world of free speech. At least in America, you're allowed to have whatever opinion you want. So even when I hear somebody sharing an opinion that I disagree with and I think they're an idiot for thinking the way that they're thinking, I still respect the fact they're allowed to have that opinion. But when somebody puts an opinion, the first thing I think to myself is, okay, if this person thought the opposite, would they say it out loud? Would they say it in the same place, in the same words, to the same people that they're saying opinion A, would they say opinion B? That's the first question I ask myself anytime anybody pushes any idea, any opinion, anything they put out there, and they act all high and mighty and passionate and they act like they're being courageous because they're saying something. Would you say it if you thought the opposite? And this is why a whole lot of athletes, a whole lot of media people, a whole lot of, I'm not even going to say politicians, no, athletes, media people, alleged journalists, they are not actually journalists anymore, journalism is dead, academic type folks, all these individuals who act like they're being courageous because they're talking about stuff, none of these people have any real courage. Let me not say none of them. The ones who I see, let's put it that way. many of them who I see, let me say many, I'm not gonna say none. Many of them don't have any real courage, because if they thought the opposite of what they're saying now, they wouldn't be saying it out loud. They would think it, and they would just think it quietly. They wouldn't say it out loud. They wouldn't post it on social media. They wouldn't make a video about it. They wouldn't do any of that. So remember when Jalen Rose did that stupid thing where he sounded like an idiot, talking about we shouldn't say Mount Rushmore anymore because it got stolen from the Native Americans. What the hell does Jalen Rose know about any of that? Nothing. But when he came out and said that, right? Remember when he said that? He has the right to the opinion. I still think he sounds stupid, but he has the right to feel. He has the right to sound stupid if he wants to sound stupid. Here's my question. If somebody else said that and Jalen Rose thought, you know what? That's a dumb thing for somebody to say, that we shouldn't use Mount Rushmore because, and give the same reason that I gave. If Jalen Rose thought how I thought about Mount Rushmore and somebody else has said that, would he make a video saying that? Of course, we all know the answer is no, he would not. Because remember, Jalen Rose works for ESPN. He's not allowed to say that. If Jalen Rose, who works for ESPN, let's just use him as an example. I don't know what he had to say about this Rachel Richardson thing that was this bullshit story that they made up. I don't know if he said anything. But if Jalen Rose looks at the situation and says, okay, clearly this girl was lying and she made up a bullshit story and we need to hold her accountable for it, could he say that out loud? Could he post a video on Instagram and say that? We all know the answer is hell no, he couldn't, because he would get fired from ESPN. He wouldn't have a job anymore. He'd be unemployed looking for work if he said that out loud. Does anybody question what I just said? Jalen Rose, you see this. Tell me I'm wrong. Am I lying, Jalen Rose? Jalen Rose, I'm wrong? You would still have a job if you said this out loud? Of course you would. Of course you would. You would not have a job anymore. Stephen A. Smith. They did a whole segment talking about we need to look at BYU and look at all these colleges. What else is going on with these colleges that's racist over this whole Rachel Richardson thing? But they didn't even have the facts yet. They didn't have the information yet. Could Stephen A. Smith come out and say, oh, let me offer a retraction of what I said and let's condemn this girl for coming out with this bullshit story? Could he say that and still have a job? Of course not. So what does it matter what he has to say about anything on the subject of race? Because we know his hands are tied behind his back and he's only allowed to have one perspective. I want to make sure y'all understand what I'm saying here. The value of anything in life is the counterbalance of it. All right, the counterbalance means, could you go the opposite direction? In other words, the reason why we have freedom and safety in the United States of America is because we are capable of going to war. See, if America was incapable of going to war to defend ourselves physically, then we wouldn't have the freedom that we have. And the reason why people have the freedom to have opinions in America is because you are capable of, you have to be able to go out and defend your opinion and defend your perspective and defend whatever it is that you're saying. And a lot of people these days are so compromised, especially on subjects like race, because people have been basically taught you got to have a certain perspective because of your color or because of where you're from or because of where you work, who you take your paychecks from. You're not allowed to have the other opinion. And again, I'm not making this up. If I got this wrong, if I got anything wrong here, please let me know. If I'm making any of this up, that people at ESPN, they can't come out and say, who at ESPN is a Republican? How many Republicans are on TV, on the air every day at ESPN? Name one. But you know there's a lot of Democrats coming on TV, right? Name one person at ESPN who could come out and say it is not right for a man to join the women's sports team and play women's sports all season with nobody saying anything, and that's completely wrong. Name one person at ESPN who could say that out loud on the air and still have a job. Name one person. So when they come out and they try to advocate for transgenderism, does it really matter? Because again, they're not allowed to go in the opposite direction. So how much should we value anything that they're saying? All right, I said this like 3 different ways here, so I don't need to say it anymore, but I want to know what y'all think. If y'all are catching what I'm saying here, do I need to say this again? Do I need to say it in a different way to make sure people get it? Because I want to make sure I'm articulating myself properly. And my business is based on my ability to communicate clearly. So if y'all are getting this, let me know. And if you agree with what I'm saying, you disagree, tell me where you stand, if I got this right or if I don't have it right. But the whole point is, you should only value somebody's opinion when they have the right to have any opinion they want. And if you know that a person's opinion is compromised by the fact that they're not allowed to have a certain perspective, but then they're pushing the other perspective, all right, then this person ain't real. There's nothing courageous about that. There's nothing real about that. There's nothing manly about it. There's nothing womanly about it. There's nothing adult about it, because they don't have a choice. So they're acting like they're courageous to push a certain perspective, but there's nothing courageous about it. You're bought. You're compromised. You're doing what your bosses tell you to do, or what your fans are telling you you don't have a choice but to do. I don't respect that. But you tell me if I got it right or I got this wrong. Text me, get my motivation text when I send it out. My number's 305-384-6894. Work on your game. Dre all day.